So we're here to talk through Prasanna's new variation that he calls balance loop. It's actually a pretty original and fun idea. I was really excited when I first saw it. It had a lot of potential for new kinds of logic. One of the things, certainly this puzzle can be driven by number clues or just by the presence of the balanced and unbalanced circles. The earlier puzzle in this week that was just entitled Squares didn't have even any numbers, so it was mostly about the circle effects. But when we have puzzles with numbers, you may think that some of the starting points are around those numbers. This puzzle's a theme around sixes, and so you can quickly at the start see that all white circles will have two legs that are 3 long, so this circle is particularly pinned. Something else to note is with the black circles, and this is kind of deduction that will come up later in the puzzle to great effect, is that one of the legs has to be larger than 3. So there is a leg of 4 or 5, but those are the only choices with the 6. And that sense of the longest reach necessary is one way to think about the black clues in these puzzles to get some good results. Anyway, back to this start. You'll run into a kind of cornering logic, which worked out as well in the squares puzzle earlier this week, which is when a circle has no option but to come out like this. It now also has the fact that if this cell is turning, that cell is turning, that there is a whatever one cell does, the other one in the balance loop off of a white circle is going to do the same. And so if these both turn, you see they both are forced to turn into each other and close the loop. So there's one simple pattern to start to see, which is scenarios where the groups must go straight because the two legs are locked together. Here we can do first this, knowing that this 6 is 3 long in either direction. It's coming like this, so now back to this scenario. These two are going to turn together to close a loop or go straight to keep the puzzle solvable. So connections like that pop up. You can come back to this earlier circle. If these turn, they turn together and close off the loop, so they must go straight. We actually get this up here, we get this up here, we have a 1 assigned there, which quickly works out like this. This black circle has to come to the right, it has to go at least 2 since it has a leg of 1. This circle now is a 4, so it's a 2 plus a 2. We don't actually know which direction yet. Coming back, we've done this logic before. These two spots will turn together. In this case, they would close off a loop, so these must go one further. I'm just going to work off the diagonal, which is, I think, the other way Prasanna intended progress at this point. We're going to get the same deduction we had earlier in the puzzle. The next positions of these must go straight. We now have set these white circles to be 4s, so they don't go in this direction. If this came down, you'd see that that will break as well, so this overall is an 8. Get to here. This 6 clue has no other options for it. The blacks must come at least 3 out in each direction. One of these is going to have to go straight and the other turn, so there's a different kind of thinking. We don't have the scenario where turning is going to close off the loop here, because if this turned, this would go straight or vice versa. But following the diagonal down again, here's another white circle, it's got to go straight. Here's another scenario where you may go straight. Once we actually have 2 here, you'd see that an extension in this direction would get too long, so we'll put in the 6, mark the turns. This one will be a 1-5 or 2-4, we don't know what yet at the moment, but at least the pieces I've written in are solid for it. This 6, I guess I failed to mark the no turning ends, but coming back here, those connections are good. Now we have a different way this logic goes here. If these continued straight, they'd both go straight, and that would close off the loop, so these both turn. Come back to these. If these went both straight, they would close off the loop, so they both turn. So the sense that you have some pretty distal ends, at least many squares separated that are behaving together or apart, is one of the neat new features of this style. So we get a little a bit of direction up in this corner to use. Write those marks in. The next sort of place we need to quickly make some deductions looks to be down in this corner. One of the things to keep in mind is that, and this is the hardest step for me in the forward solve of this puzzle, is the fact that this circle is going to have a leg that's 4 or 5 long. And when you're pinning off a circle, particularly a white on an edge, let's imagine the long leg came to the top. This circle now needs to have an even spacing on both sides to get out, and you see that what you'd actually make is something that's going to turn and collide. So there's a way that pinning off white circles is really forcing in a puzzle like this, and particularly one on an edge which already only has 3 options to come out is going to have a heck of a time if you actually block one of them and force it down this channel. So there's a kind of a deduction that either a leg 4 or 5 long goes this way, and that actually helpfully sets out some of those rules. This now points back to this clue. This also has the constraint that a leg goes 4 or 5 in some direction. It only has one direction left that can be that long. That actually completes a white circle that needs to have another leg of 4. So we get here. This still needs to get to a total of 6. So that does that. We have this leg. This turns up. This will be a 1 plus a 1. We want to not strand an end of the loop, so it's got to take those 2 ends. This comes here. We see now we have a little mini loop here, and we've actually broken off this piece, so these have to go this way to keep one loop going. So this mini loop down here, we don't want to close too soon, so that edge is no good. It's going to connect to here. You can ask yourself, does this turn yet or not? One of the things that we need to mark in more carefully is the consideration of how, if say this continued this way and didn't close to this end, what does this bottom look like? You're now building a really, really long stretch that gets to this white circle, and there's no way you're going to get something long enough in any remaining direction to do that. So there should be some intuition that the bottom comes up and may eventually come back down, but this channel is blocked from this end. That end has to connect somehow to the 6. We have a total of 6 clues for it, so it comes to here. And get this. This needs to come up. That makes a 1. Does this. Come over. This doesn't want to close, so that 2 turns up. This is an interesting spot over here, and you'll see why in a second. There are 3 ends down below. One of the ends is going to extend at the top. This extends here. You can think that this comes down, but that's going to force this other end to just do too much. You need a 1 with a 1. It's got to go this way. We still have 2 ends that are chasing each other over on the side of the grid. This little bit would close off if it didn't come together there. We're back to the scenario we have a clue that needs a long segment, 4 long, only one option for that, remaining count is 2. Get here. We have this black circle's already had a segment 1 long, so it must continue at least 2 more. Notice that if it goes straight here, it's going to strand 3 ends to the left. That's not a good scenario to be in, so something like this. There's a nice rule that happens in cramped spaces with blacks. You'll see it here as you always must have a leg that is 2 or greater. In this case we have an option for a 1, and a 1, so there must be that 2. You'll now see that closes off the rest of that black. Get to here. That white extends and connects, that white extends and connects, and this somewhat challenging, I shouldn't say somewhat challenging, rather challenging balanced loop puzzle is finished. It's a style I think we're actually going to showcase a little more in the future. It was a really great discovery by Prasanna, and hope that you enjoyed the challenge of this new loop variation this week. We'll see you again soon.